Hello, it's Clint again, and I'm pulling double duty today. I've got to make two videos, and that is because these videos on writing comics are a labor of love. They don't get very many views. People just don't search for it for some reason, but I'm going to still make them anyway because I feel like if they're out there long enough, they're going to help enough people that I still find value in it. So I'm going to make this, and then I'm going to go back and make some more, comics news and commentary videos because that's what the public wants. Okay, so I'm going to say this episode is going to be on plotting your comic book. This is very important. However, you're going to get the most out of this if you watch the last writing comics one I did, and I'm going to put these all in a nice playlist. But the last one was on getting an idea for your comic, and I'm going to use the information that we gathered there and apply it here for this plotting section. So now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about plotting. So what I've got here up on the screen now is a representation of the sort of emotions or the tensions that you might create when you're writing a comic or a graphic novel or whatever you're looking at, really any story. So you'd start out low. You're going to have some kind of catalyst that puts your story in motion, and it's going to be some kind of a problem, some kind of a situation, and there's a problem that needs to be solved. If there's no problem, then you have no story. So you've got to have a problem. So that's the initial problem that gets you going. That's the catalyst. There will be several events that happen that will build you up to your climax. And the climax is where you get the emotional payoff, and then you'll have some kind of resolution at the end. Now, you're going to have probably many of these kinds of climaxes. This is just a basic one way that things might look. But depending on your story, you're going to have different emotional high notes and low notes. But this is basically the kind of stuff that you're going to see. So if I'm plotting, I know in my case, I'm working on a 6-issue or 6-chapter graphic novel. And so for each of those chapters, I'm going to want to do something like this and plan out where I want my emotional highs to be and how I'm going to push the plot forward. And then have some kind of resolution at the end. So I'm going to do that for the entire graphic novel, and then I'm going to also do it for each individual issue. Now, at the end of each issue, I'm going to want you to keep reading so that you'll want to keep, going forward in the story. So I'm not going to completely resolve things, but I might resolve just something. Or I might end it off with somewhere like right here, end it off at a climax, and that's okay. But overall, you're going to want to have some kind of emotional payoff. If that emotional payoff gets delayed too long, then people are going to lose interest and they're going to be frustrated with your story. So you've got to build tension, but you're also going to have to release it at some point in time. Okay, next. So plotting. So I've got my story. I've introduced my characters and my world. Now I'm going to make a very loose outline for the events that are going to take place in my issue. Now, I would first want to do this for the complete story. I'd want to make sure I have a goal for each issue to cover. But in this video, I'm not going to go over the whole thing. We're just going to do issue 1. And so by the end of the series, I'll have issue 1 completely written out. And I'm going to basically do the same process for everything. So don't worry. I know that there are going to be more issues or more chapters, for example. But we're just going to work on the one for sake of brevity. Okay, so essentially, I want Joanne to get the sort of magic orb that keeps the floating city afloat. Then I'm going to want the bad guys to go after Joanne. And then I'm going to want Joanne to narrowly escape using the orb so it can show us the power of it, what it can do. And then the bad guys are going to capture her brother Jonas. And then Joanne's going to help Jonas escape. And then Joanne and Jonas are going to lay low. And then we're going to set things up for the next issue. So these are very, very rough. These are just to give me sort of stepping stones to get to where I need to go. Okay, so obviously this is not a story. This is not interesting to read. So we're going to go through and we're going to flesh it out even more. I've added more lines in between those steps that are going to sort of coherently connect things together. So Joanne is cleaning windows. So that's that's where we're going to start. She's cleaning windows. This will hopefully be a good opportunity to show the reader a little bit about Joanne and what kind of person she is. And then she's going to see a fight inside of a Capitol building, and it's going to be over the orb. So she's outside cleaning the windows, looking in, and she witnesses some stuff going down. Then there's a senator, someone of some importance. I don't have this all figured out just yet, but this senator, we'll call them, gives the orb to Joanne out of desperation and tells her to keep it safe. Okay, so this is our catalyst, essentially. Everything has changed. Now, Joanne, she didn't have a problem when she started the story. Now she's got a big problem. And the idea is we're just going to make that problem bigger and bigger and bigger. So she has the orb. The bad guys kill the senator that gave her the orb. The bad guys go after Joanne. The bad guys have her cornered. Then Joanne narrowly escapes using the power of the orb. Bad guys identify Joanne and go after her brother, to get to her, presumably. And then, this would be some kind of a scene change. Jonas is working at his job. I'm going to say it's a towing job. I might change that. Jonas sees a strange vehicle. The bad guys capture Jonas, and they tie him up and put him in that strange vehicle. The bad guy is going to hint at the high stakes. So this would be where, in a very superhero-esque way, the bad guy would monologue and give us some information about their plan. You don't have to do it that way. In fact, monologuing is not necessarily the best way to convey information, but there's definitely things you can do to hint at how big of a deal everything is, and that raises the stakes. So Joanne goes for Jonas, finds him in trouble. She uses the power of the orb again to help Jonas. The bad guy falls to his death, ? I don't know if I want them to die or just be out of the picture for the moment. And then Joanne and Jonas lay low. And then we're going to set things up for the next issue. And I had an idea for that. Maybe we have some other senator, some new senator that's very angry, and they make plans. Okay, so again, this is still an extremely rough outline, but it's giving me something to work with. So this would be the next step. All right, so I'm looking at all of these events, series of events that I've put together, and I highlighted them just to show you how they would sort of cluster together into scenes. Putting events or actions into scenes is very important because that helps you. That's really where the plotting occurs. So everything in yellow here is essentially all in the same scene. There's a lot going on. It is an action scene. I think there's probably a lot more to explain here. And usually your first scene is doing a lot of work because it's setting up the entire story. So it's so important. Your first issue is really important, and your first scene is even more important. It's crucial. So there's a lot going on there, and I might find ways to break it up. The big thing is I just want to make it continue to be interesting. So this would be another scene. The bad guys identify Joanne and go after her brother. It could be a very, very short scene, and that would make sense to me. But you could still do some character development and sort of show how high the stakes are, amp up the tension. Okay, another one, we're in a different location, right? So all of these are changing locations. You'll notice as soon as when I change colors, it's a new scene, it's a new location, it's a new time. Jonas is tied up inside the vehicle, so even outside of the vehicle is one scene, inside is another. Something I want to point out here is it's very bad writing and it's uninteresting if you're explaining if you're showing us how they get from point A to point B. People are smart enough to figure it out. If he sees bad guys outside of the vehicle and then scene cut and then he's inside of the vehicle, we're going to know that he walked, right? Or so he was dragged something to get into that vehicle. So I do want some time to pass here. So this would be a good one where I would actually want to insert some sort of bridge scene or something. And it could be as simple as maybe we cut back to Joanne and she's flying on her little flying motorcycle to get to Jonas, hopefully before the bad guys do. Or we might cut, see, I've got the senator down here, the new bad guy senator. I could have him introduced earlier, and maybe we cut to the senator or something, and he's, showing us he's angry. He's sort of developing the story and just amping up the tension. That's a way that we can avoid having to feel like we have to explain how he got from outside to inside, because that's really boring. No one wants to read that. Okay, next we have Joanne goes for Jonas, finds him in trouble. So this is, time has passed. So essentially, these three scenes are all roughly in the same location. There's a strange vehicle, either whether they're outside, inside, or outside again. So we would just want to show that some time passed, if it has passed. And that's, again, where you would insert little scenes or even just single panels of like the sun changing or something, just to show that time passed. Okay, and then Joanne and Jonas lay low. And of course, I want to flesh this all out. So you get the idea. I'm breaking it up into scenes that make sense. And if I need to, I'm going to be adding scenes in between or changing things up a little bit. So that way I can control the pacing. Because you don't want to just go from we're here, and we're not, just strictly going chronologically. We're going to be switching back and forth to different locations to keep things interesting. And to also, just control the pace of the storytelling. All right, once you have your scenes all figured out, and I would suggest, like for this outline that I put together, I would actually go through that and make more specific events that I think should happen. And then what I like to do is make something like this, and it's just a scene, like an explanation for each scene. So I'd actually take my first draft, my rough draft of my script, and I'm going to write the scene, like scene 1 or whatever, and then I'm going to make sure I know where it's at. What is the location, what characters are there, and then what is my goal as a writer for this scene. If you can't think of a goal for this scene and it's really just to fill time, it's a bad scene. There has to be something that's pushing the story forward. So use it wisely. You want to use every scene to the maximum ability that you can. And this sounds obvious, but it gets forgotten a lot. And every scene should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Every story should have a beginning, a middle, and the end. So you're sort of doing mini. I showed you this little graph or whatever from earlier. You're still going to want to have something that initiates some kind of action, and then you're going to want to probably amp up the tension and have some kind of resolution. Now that resolution's not going to necessarily be that a problem was solved. Most of the time it's not, but it's going to be some decision is made or some event is triggered. So we call this in the business Trifle Cycles. All good storytelling, I don't care what medium you're in, Trifle Cycles are massively important. So this would be like even the little scene at the beginning where Joanne gets the orb and gets away from the bad guys. Her taking the orb and just flying away is really boring. So I'm going to make her try even just little things to get away and fail at it. So she might turn the wrong direction. They actually grab onto her clothes or something, and that makes it difficult. She tries to punch them, and they overpower her. And then finally, she escapes somehow, pokes them in the eye, and is able to escape barely. So that makes a scene so much more interesting. If things feel a little bland, you review how easy things are and add more Trifle Cycles. Again, they can be really small, but there has to be some effort put forward and failure in order for you to get that emotional payoff when you actually succeed. And if I haven't hit this one hard enough, you have to make sure there are lots of problems. I don't remember what writer said this, but basically you want to have your character stuck in a tree and then leave them in the tree and then beat them with sticks or something. I'm paraphrasing. But you want that character to have a miserable experience. And really, if you think about all your favorite movies, nobody is just walking on air and having no problems whatsoever. I'm thinking, I guess, of Bueller's Day Off. There's that might be a little bit different, but there's still Trifle Cycles. It's just from I guess other methods. So it's interesting storytelling. Keep in mind, all of these rules can be broken as long as you have a point to it and you know what you're doing. Go for it. And then in every scene, you should be working on character development. These can be really simple things. I think I'm going to do an entire video just on character development because it's so important. But yeah, have goals for the characters that are in that scene. How are you going to develop them? How are you going to flesh them out? How are you going to make them 3-dimensional instead of 2-dimensional? Again, I'll make a video specifically on that. All right, and last but not least, be willing to change your outline. Your outline is not going to be perfect. You're going to write it, and then you're going to find problems. Be ready and willing to axe things and make it better. Cut things out, edit it down, whatever you need to do. The best stories, they're not written in one go. Writing is rewriting. Remember that. Everybody has to rewrite. It doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It means you're a good writer. So I hope you liked that content. Let me know if you have any questions on plotting. I want to be pushing forward and making more of these videos. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you next time.